guys. Welcome back to the Walleye Files. I'm Brandon, my good buddy Jake, and we've got a fantastic guest today. Tom, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we're
absolutely.
super happy
Thanks
to
for
have you
coming.
on.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Something, can't be outside doing anything anyway. It's like, was it negative 20 some degrees this morning and probably negative 10 now at least.
Yeah, it's gross outside.
Yeah.
I had a couple buddies invite me to go fishing, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I think I'm gonna sit this one out, boys.
Yeah. Well, here next weekend looks like what 40s, almost 50 in some of the areas. So that's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, it looks like we'll be getting off the ice.
Yeah. Well,
Gosh, we can only hope.
Yeah.
Might have to get the boat out and head down to Pool 4.
There you go. I have to. Yeah. Sometime in March I'll be able to do that.
There you go.
Have you gotten your new boat yet?
Yep, sitting in it right now.
Oh, awesome.
You don't see the power poles?
The second time I've been in it. Yeah, the power poles back here.
I guess I do see that now.
Yeah, there's the Suzuki.
There we go. Are you running that 4-blade prop, or what was that? It was like
it's adult.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, so they're counter rotating props on the Suzuki 350. So yeah, I ran it last year, and yeah, it's awesome. Like just crazy torque as far as getting up on plane, and my first experience with it was obviously putting it into the water, and when I put it in reverse, I was like, oh, hold on a second, like it just an idle. I mean, those props grip, but I got so used to it. I like it like that though, because like in as you guys probably know, when we were in Mississippi River Pool 3 and Pool 4, me and Chase, Chemos, and Springle, we didn't go through the lock. We went the backwaters.
Yeah.
And having that dual prop in those literal inches of water actually was nice.
Yeah, I bet. I had a couple buddies ask me if they thought anybody would be doing that, and I said, not a chance. There's no way. And then as soon as we get off the water, I heard about you guys, and I was like, oh my God, they're crazy.
Well, I guess your buddy or you guys have never met Tommy Chemos. So.
So, Tom, you're running the DVX 22 again this year?
I am. Love this boat.
Yeah, like we kind of shouted back and forth to each other a few times. You're part of the reason why I'm in a Vexus. I just liked the fact that you were in one, and I was just looking at guys who were in a DVX 20 the first year you had a Vexus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, okay, Tom had a great season. That's a reason to look at one. And, I'm completely satisfied with it for sure.
It's just solid. That's the best word for it, is just a straight up solid boat. Like there's no boat on the market right now that's cheap. They're all expensive. But one gentleman I met at a show that was in the market, and like just looking at different boats, he said it really nicely. He said, at least there's a company out there where you can see where their money goes to, So
it's all quality for sure.
Yep, they're nice boats.
And there's so much added storage with that back little compartment there. Like it's something that like you don't think of when you're in other boats, and then you get into a Vexus and you're like, holy crap, where did this storage come from? Like how,
Yep. And for me, I have one tackle box that I use all season long. It's like this thick, and it's really nice to have like probably $700 worth of snacks in the boat at all times. So the storage comes in real handy.
It's not full of crankbaits, Tom? Is that what you're telling me?
I think I have one or two, and they have rusty hooks on them.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So, Tom, what's your season for 2025 looking like? Obviously, you're going to fish the National Walleye Tour. I did not mention in the opening intro that you are the National Walleye Tour reigning champion.
Yeah.
So obviously you're gonna get after another title. You're gonna try to defend your title. What other events are you looking forward to fishing this year?
The only place I've been to before is Green Bay, which I've never been to this time of year. And I've never been to that side of Erie. Otherwise, I've never been to Lake Sharp, and I've never been to La Crosse. But La Crosse is probably the one that I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think it's the one I'm looking forward to the most, because when I first started doing this just a few years ago, I was very vocal on how I dreaded fishing rivers. Like, it was not my thing. Obviously it's hard to live scope rivers until, you know, I zeroed on Detroit River that year. That's why I didn't make the championship to go to Dunkirk. And that's the only time I've ever zeroed. I mean, it can happen again. It can happen anytime. But like, after that tournament on Detroit, I went, was it a week or two later? We had an AIM tournament on the Mississippi River, Pool 4, and Nate and I won that. Like, we went from zeroing to winning that we won it pretty handily, if I remember right. And then after that, like, it gave me confidence to be like, okay, this is how I can use forward-facing sonar in these situations. And since then, actually, I think I have averaged the top 10 on rivers since then. And so I think a lot of people are dreading going to that section of the Mississippi, but I think that's one I'm looking more forward to, just because I can utilize what I've learned.
Now, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Obviously, you've got some tricks up your sleeve when it comes to doing those things. But what's your mindset when you pull into that Mississippi River tournament, or any Mississippi River or any river tournament? What has changed for you over the last couple of years as far as dreading the Detroit and dreading rivers to just a different mindset or different technique or whatever?
No, I don't. I literally have zero. People think I have secrets. I have no secret. That's why the university is what it is. Like, I have nothing that I have hidden or secret. So as far as rivers go, like the one we won on Mississippi River, I learned that I could use my live scope to find underwater structure that could be used as current break. We're normally looking for current breaks above the water. But I was using it in that tournament to find, like, in this particular instance, it was on some riprap that when it was formed, or all those rocks were dumped there was like an arm of riprap, really small one, coming out underneath the water that I was able to take advantage of before they opened the gates on the river after like 45 minutes of the tournament, and just blew everything out of there. But then when we moved spots, Nate and I, we spot locked the rest of the tournament on one spot, and the key to that spot was there was a giant tree laying wedged down by some boulders where a creek came into the Mississippi, and that tree, you couldn't see it above the water at all. It was like laying on the bottom, and we were using that, and then we just sat there and pitch at it. We would go hour, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes without a bite, but once we get bit, we catch 2 or 3, and a couple of those fish happen to be, still to this day, the biggest walleyes I've ever seen with my actual own eyes, and so things just lined up for the tournament. But now what I do is I just go to I'm going to go into these backwaters. I'm going to go, like, look at backwaters anywhere where or look for these underwater current breaks. That's key, especially in the main channel. If you can find a really good underwater break like that, you could sit there all day long, because there's fish not there all the time, but there's fish that come through and rest there. And they come through and they rest. They just come, the bait comes and rests, so the big fish. So then I like finding those, and they don't have to be very big. They could be the size of your boat or smaller, and sometimes those are actually the best ones. But now, I just like, dialing this craft with forward-facing sonar into the weeds, and just going in search mode, and keeping in my mind that, and it's all discipline. Like, you can't just cast in a tournament. You can't cast at every single mark you see. You have to understand what the size quality is in that system, and only cast at the biggest fish in that system to maximize your time. So I'm fine if I only catch 5 fish a tournament.
So when you're talking about fishing the river there, and you found some riprap and a down tree, are you utilizing your perspective mode to find that kind of stuff, or are you just using forward?
Forward at all times. Like, there'll be a day when I will have the time to try to dial in perspective mode. I still, till now, I haven't been able to utilize it where it's going to affect me positively or efficiently. I haven't done it. Like, even if in forward view, like because, a perspective gives you a pretty good swath that you're looking at. But whenever I'm going with searching with forward, I'm not just, going straight. I'm going straight, but I'm panning at that swath anyway. And then by doing that, I'm able to not only zero in on targets, but I'm instantly able to tell you the size within an inch or two of that fish better than I can with perspective. And even with perspective, if you're looking out and you see a fish, it's still a little tiny bit of a guessing game. You have to, look at the distance real quick, and you have to find that right angle. But I think there's something there to be unlocked. Whenever I'm out pre-fishing for a tournament or trying to get content, like, I don't want to be messing around, you know what I mean? So it's just been forward for me this last few years.
Yeah, I feel
Well, if
like
there's a guy that can figure that out, I think we're talking to him.
I'm going to try one of these days.
I feel like at the end of the day, like when you're searching for fish before a tournament, efficiency is everything. And like you said, if you're not 100% dialed in on that piece of technology, you could spend a whole week of practice dialing yourself to a point where you think you're really good, but at the end of the day, if that's not your 100%, I'm dead set on using this, I got this 100%, you're not beating people, especially in the NWT where everybody's out there to take your lunch money.
Yep. No. Yeah, you're right. If I didn't have, day job and, didn't have the content to get for the university right now and just could fish literally all the time, then yeah, maybe I'd have time to just put perspective mode on, leave it on for a month, and not use anything but that. That's the only way a person is going to use it or get efficient. And the same with forward. Like, people all the time, they're like, what's your advice on getting, dialed in on forward facing sonar? I'm like, keep it simple. I mean, technology is very intimidating. There's so many options, so many settings, and I just find it funny. Like, I go onto the Garmin, the Facebook group where people, Garmin owners deals where they have issues. Daily, people have so many little issues that are constant and reoccurring that I've literally never seen, but it's because they get in there and they're pushing all these buttons, they're doing all these things, and like, they don't know where their settings even end up. And so it's like, I teach people to use the electronics the way they were invented. So that's it.
You touched on that AIM tournament on Pool 4 a little bit ago. I actually was in that tournament, and I gotta tell you, I came in, I caught one fish in practice, by the way. I came in with about 12 pounds, and I think we ended up in the top 20, maybe top 15, but we came in and I had 12 pounds, and I felt great about that 12 pounds until I saw you come walking in and drop, I think it was 30 something on the table there.
Yeah, I don't remember, but it was great. And too, in practice, Nate and I I think I only caught, if I remember, I don't think I caught one, myself caught one walleye, and he maybe caught two. And so, it was just a magical day for us, but my goodness, it was, and I haven't been back during that time of year, and I want to, maybe this year.
Yeah, get some snow and some sleet and 20-degree weather all week. That was fun, though. I will say that. It was a lot of fun. So, all right. Over the last handful of years, Tom, you've been dominating pretty handedly, I think, on a lot of these tournament trails. What do you think is kind of the key to your success?
Being stubborn, really. In the beginning, I just happened to be in 2019, whenever I did a boat upgrade. Now when I upgraded my boat, I upgraded from the boat I just bought. I didn't set foot into a boat till I was like 35, 36 years old or so. And that was the first boat I actually bought. Like, I I had never fished out of a boat with anybody, even been in a boat before that. And so I think that's part of it, because I had no bad habits. I had nobody to really learn from. And in 2019, when I upgraded that original boat and putting Garmin in the boat without really understanding even what the Panoptic or Live Scope was, I just did it because it was the new, latest, greatest thing. Me being the first one to utilize that, probably. Like, I don't think I was the first one to have it in a boat, but I do think, looking back, I think I was probably the first to utilize it the way it's being used now. And so, but my stubbornness is what got me to where I'm at now, because, like I said, I would just turn it on, use it the way it was meant to be used, didn't complain that there was a ghost tree, didn't complain about there was interference, because once all that complaining started, that's when Garmin started putting in noise rejection, ghost rejection, all of these settings that we could control. In the beginning, there was none of that. And I always started with, and still to this day, use the same color palette that I've used in the very beginning, and I never change it. I hear from guys that I compete with all the time, like, well, I use the blue color palette when I'm in weeds, or the green one when I'm in rocks, or amber when I'm in open water. And it's like, that's personal preference. That's fine. But to me, I believe, like, even little things like that it confuses our brain without us even knowing it. Like, our eyes have to adjust to 3 or 4 different color palettes all the time. And I just think that, for me, I look at the same thing all the time. That way I know what I'm looking at. For me, that blue color palette looks cool. Like, you know what I'm talking about? That one with the blue background and the fish show up as red. But my theory on that is that red giant walleye mark, or that walleye mark, you can't see its opacity, meaning you can't see through it as well as you can if you have a black background color palette, like I use. I use black emerald. And so by looking at that opacity, being able to see through, like, some fish are really, really dense. Some are like 85% dense. Some are 60% dense. And some of them are like super transparent. And by me being able to see that, I know exactly what fish species that is, or I know if it's a walleye or not, so I'm not wasting time. But that's my thing on that. There's so many settings, so many things in there that I think is confusing a lot of us. I think if we were just to sit down, dial in one thing and get that perfected, we're good. Or, like, I think also Nate and I were the first ones to put 2 live scope transducers on our trolling motor. One was in forward, one was in down. And then everybody was starting to do that. People were putting 2 transducers on their transom, looking out for live side scan, 1 or 2 on a pole in their cockpit. And, like, that was getting really popular in 2022, 2023. And last year, I made a post and I said, right before the 2024 season, I said, all right, guys, I'm going to challenge myself and only use 1 transducer on my trolling motor, 1 transducer on my boat all year long, just to show you guys that you have to be good at one before you can just keep adding to see if you can be better than the next guy. Because I think that's what people's intent was. Like, I'm going to put a second one on because so-and-so has it. I'm going to put a third one on. It's going to make me that much better. It's making people worse because their minds are going everywhere. So that's what I'm saying. Be stubborn. Focus on that one until you have it dialed in. Otherwise, you're not going to catch up.
I think there's something definitely to be said with keeping things simple and keeping it where, like I'm not a absolute aficionado with live scope, right? But I understand my limitations, and I feel like that makes me better than somebody who doesn't understand their limitations and doesn't understand their own knowledge level on it.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's like what people ask me my settings for years, and I'd always give it to them. And now I have a way people can go in and look at my exact settings at all times. My settings don't change. And he kind of made the example in a seminar a couple of weeks ago where about the technology and all the settings, like Like whoever invented forward-facing sonar obviously is brilliant. They're a very, very smart individual. And I'm using that technology the way that person made it. And that's how it is when you turn the screen on, basically, And I made the example of like if I go to a nice steakhouse and spend $40 on a steak, which I don't do, I'm too cheap. But if I were to go do that, to go buy a $40 steak, I would not put sauce on it. Like I'm gonna eat that the way it is, and I'm gonna utilize the electronics the way they were meant to be used. And so I think if a lot of people do that, they're gonna be so much better.
Yeah, I think you're right. 100%. Especially, do you have, well, okay, so do you have any tips for people so like down on, let's say pool 4, you got a lot of, catfish and sheephead and everything else in that system. And a lot of people that try to go down there and live scope down on the lake, they just have a tough time picking out, the walleyes out of all of those other fish. Do you have any tips for people to kind of pick out the walleyes they want out of those schools?
Yeah. I show everything in the university. Like honestly, I spent hours getting the screen recordings showing people how to dictate species. And whenever I was talking to somebody the other day, and I made the comment that it's not that hard, but it is. I made the comment because now I can go and I can look and I can pick these species out. Now, it doesn't mean that I can sit there and explain and you're going to get what I'm saying. You have to go put it to use. And I dialed that in Wisconsin, actually. I dialed it in at the Lake Winnebago system a few years ago. I came in second place there by 7 ounces, but I was fishing the upper river systems where all those junk fish were. I barely caught a limit each day, because it was just looking through all of the junk. And so what I dialed in, I can kind of explain some of it here, even without the visual, but what I noticed was at that time, it was full of sheephead and drum, white bass, catfish, carp, some northern, but whatever, not too many northern to be worried about. But with each pan of my transducer, I was looking at 20, 30, 40 fish, each pan. And I'm in 5, 6 feet of water max over there. And I'm panning around looking fish. My first day of practice, I was casting at every single mark. And finally, after about 3 hours, I caught a walleye, about 2.5 pounder. And out there, that's a good sized fish. But the problem was, I'm like, okay, what did that mark look like? I couldn't rewind my brain to be like, what did that mark look like that I just casted? So I just kept going, and I finally started to piece it together after 2 or 3 days, where after looking at literally tens of thousands of fish, easy, there, hands down, thousands of fish I looked at and tried to decipher. And probably 1%, less than 1% of them were walleyes. Okay, so that was the thing. So I had to look and see which mark, the rarest mark in the system, what that looked like compared to the rest. So when you're out scanning and you see a fish, it doesn't matter what fish it is. If you see a fish in 8 to 10 feet of water and it's suspended, it shows up at a distance as a vertical return, right? Okay, that vertical return isn't ever just a stagnant, still return. Like if you look at a weed, that is a stagnant return, meaning it's just one color, not moving, just right there. It's dead, really. Okay. A fish is like pulsating a little bit, glimmering, if you will, that pulse. So what I learned, those marks by watching white bass and smallmouth bass, those returns are glimmering like really fast, like pulsing in and out, but they're moving really, really quickly. So that is the fish's body moving. Every fish at rest is still at rest, meaning they're not swimming horizontally. They're sitting, but their bodies are still moving. Like if you look at the fish in a tank at Bass Pro Shops, those big fish are in there sitting, but their fins and tails are still moving, right? So those white bass and smallies, they're moving like more like this. Their bodies are kind of erratic. So that's why that pulsation was so fast and so bright, right? Because those fish are moving. Okay. Catfish, bright head, ghost-like body, and nothing. Just a dead return. But you know it's a fish because it's suspended. A sheephead, for example, is they move a lot. They actually swim a lot. So if I saw a sheephead, it was like darting, moving around, and stuff like that, swimming, and they look like a flattened goldfish cracker is what they look like. Like, that's just what they look like. I have recordings on the university where people can study them. And then a walleye is the perfect, I compare it to like a heartbeat. That return, it's like just pulsations in and out, in and out, in and out, like nice and slow, because when a walleye sits there, it's pretty lazy. It's sitting there just like this, like a nice, just a little steady deal, and they don't hardly move. Unless they get spooked or if they're chasing a fish or something, they're lazy. So that's the other thing. If you see a walleye mark, don't cast at 80 feet. Don't even cast at 60 feet, and you can get close to them, and people think you have to whale a cast out there all the time. I don't think I've ever casted past 50 feet ever on a fish, ever. And so that's another common mistake people make, because that first cast, if you screw it up, a lot of times you're done, because by the time that bait soars out there at 60, 70, 80, 90 feet, whatever you get, some people try to do, so many things are happening. You got the wind blowing that line, that bait a little bit. You got your boat probably pushing you blowing you over the fish. By the time you get there, you've lost it because you're trying to control too many things. You're trying to watch your bait. You're trying to watch where the fish is. So that's the other thing too, is just patience. Like sometimes I'll see a fish and it drives my co-angler, and it used to drive Nate Wolski nuts when I'd be like, nope, don't cast. Sometimes it'd be like 30, 45 seconds before I'd reposition the boat so I can make my first cast, but that fish isn't going anywhere. So there's no reason to hurry.
I think I've learned already more today than I have at quite a while.
Before we get back to the learning, because we're going to talk about the university here in a minute, but I want to ask you one question, because we've had a couple other guys that have won championships. I've never won a championship. I've won some small things. What's it like winning the pinnacle in walleye fishing?
Crazy. Like especially the way it was done this year, it's like I didn't, like going into the tournament, everybody was saying, we need 20, 25 pounds, right, to make day 3. And they were still saying that right before a tournament meeting. And I was just sitting there. It made me a little bit nervous, but then I finally, over this past year, I finally started being a little bit more confident with myself, like saying, like, look, Tom, you're only seeing 17 pounds maximum a day. That's probably enough. And so in my pre-tournament interview, I said, I need 17 pounds a day. And the guy was like, well, everybody's saying 20, 25. I'm like, maybe, but I personally am not seeing it. And so they won the tournament. I went out and caught 16 pounds. Next day I caught a little over 18. So that puts me right at that 17 average. Been to day 3 in eighth place. And I think at that point, I didn't have any eyeballs on me, really. I was like, just go out there and fish. And I had a really good feeling from examining these fish in practice that they were coming my way. Like I was fishing 80 miles south of where a big majority of the anglers were fishing, because where they were fishing, all of those fish that they were fishing for were headed south. And I don't think anybody realized it. I used my forward-facing sonar to watch what direction they were traveling during practice. They were all heading south. I don't think anybody picked up on that. So I was just sitting there waiting, and I was thinking, like, it could happen any day or it could happen next week. But the fairy tale happened, and I dropped the trolling motor in the water day 3 and instantly told my co-angler, I'm like, dude, they're here. We were done by 10:30. But so by all of those things coming together and winning that, and then almost, and I didn't think it was even remotely possible, but almost recovering enough points to win Angler of the Year, tying with Hunter, I honestly don't think I can have a better season going forward. I don't think it can happen. It was just couldn't have been scripted any better, really. And so to win it is nice, because now I've won, and not just a championship, but I've won an NWT event. I've gotten second place a few times, and So I've won one now, and so the pressure's off. Now I'm not talking pressure from you guys or the industry. It's pressure on myself, I guess. So, but trust me, I'm going to go out there and try to win every single tournament that I go out and fish. So, I mean, I'm not done yet.
Absolutely not. It's cool because we actually had your day 1 and day 3 co-angler Drew on a couple days ago. We talked to Drew a few days ago. Then he said the same thing. He's one of those things where when it all comes together, there's not many things that are just going to stop it from happening.
It was crazy. And we had a lot of, he knows it, day 3, we had a lot of interesting things happen in the boat that could not have happened. Like just things, it kind of makes a guy wonder, but it worked out and nothing really stopped us that day from putting it together and getting back safely.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it there. I think I'd listened to you on another podcast or another interview somewhere where you had said you had some kind of weird stuff going on in your boat, like the drag was tightened all the way down and just some other kind of goofy things.
The foot pedal, right?
Yeah. So after day 2 of the tournament, everything was fine. Like everything in the boat worked fine, no issues. I came in gently on day 2 just so I didn't break anything, and it was rough out there, but I mean, yeah, everything worked. And that goes to the foot pedal. The foot pedal on day 3 when I instantly. It didn't it wasn't like it took 2 minutes for something to go wrong. It was instantly jacked up. Like it was like if I turned the pedal on my toe a little bit and the motor went to turn, it would just flail over this way. And I actually was able to use it to catch 2 fish very gingerly doing that. But then I was just praying like it wasn't the actual trolling motor. But then it just went nuts. Like there's nothing I could do to fix that. So then I asked Drew, I'm like, hey, go on that back compartment. See, again, that's why I only have like a little bit of tackle. I said, go back in that back compartment, go through those snacks, move those aside, and you're going to find a Garmin, get that Garmin box out for me. And I just happened to carry, and I carry spares of a lot of stuff. It's not just trolling motor stuff or anything, but I had a brand new foot pedal, and everybody knows I get seasick and stuff out there, and these waves are bad. And so I'm up on the bow, no spot lock, anything like that. The waves are just like going crazy, and I'm unscrewing the foot pedal up there, installing a new one on the water. And thank God, like that was it. Like whenever I was nervous to push the pedal. I'm like, please be the pedal, not the motor. And it was the pedal. So all good there. Then we get to fishing, and I always have this sounds crazy too, but I have 2 rods in the boat that I use personally. And so I always have one down, and I advise this to people too in tournaments, fishing with forward-facing sonar. Doesn't matter if it's a team event or co-angler event. If you have a giant fish that you need to catch, and you cast, your bait comes off, or it bites you off, or it just doesn't want that particular bait, you don't have time, even if your rod's sitting by your feet, to look down for 3 or 4 seconds. By the time you go up, for some reason, you're going to lose that fish. Even I lose that fish sometimes. So I hollered at Drew, said, hey, Drew, can you hand me that rod? He hands me the rod, and I'm like, looking at it, the reel handle's on the opposite side. And the funny thing, he reels with the same hand I do, and we're the oddballs. We reel with actually our right hand. Okay.
Same here.
So yeah. So then I'm like, did you change this? And he's like, no. And I'm like, I mean, I didn't doubt him even 1 second. I'm like, what's going on here? Then, so I cast it, and then as the bait's going down, I'm doing the reel real quick to switch the handle over. And then when I set the hook on one of the 6-pounders, I had 2 6-pounders that day. And whenever I set the hook, there's no drag. And whenever I set the hook on a fish at about 80% swing or so, my drag's coming out. So there's no drag. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, and again, I asked him, I said, can you check these other reels? And when he did, they were pretty tight. Mine was like tight. And that was crazy. And then we get back about halfway back. We came in early because things were just going weird. And we get halfway back, and something just kind of tells me, Tom, check your live well. No water in the live well on the way back. Fisher's laying on the floor, like gills are flared. I'm like, I literally almost got physically sick. I'm like, I have 5 dead fish in here. And so I have a little bucket in the front, start bailing water into the live well, turn the live well. Water's coming into it. I pour all the G juice. I had like this much in the bottle, pour all that in there. And that 17 miles, the rest of the way back, just going through, I literally was sick. And I come around the corner there and I call the tournament director, hey, can you send Thomas down to do the courtesy check? And I didn't even want to open that live well lid. I'm like, so he did. I let him do it. And he opened it and they were breathing. I'm like, oh my gosh. But even looking back now, I had enough weight, thankfully, that I still would have pulled that off, even with 5 dead fish. But it was still crazy. And one thing I haven't said, because we weren't sure yet, in my first podcast, and this is the first podcast I actually have had like this where I can talk about it, but I didn't mention anything with my Suzuki, because on the way out, it's Drew, on the way out and on the way in, right away in the morning, I could only get like 4,300 RPMs. It was bogging down. I couldn't, even when we cut in, it was rough, but we cut into some areas where we could just go. I couldn't go. You can ask a few of the Warrior boats past us, and they were like, afterwards, they're like, was everything good? I'm like, yeah, everything was fine. But I couldn't get the RPMs. I just couldn't get up to speed. So that was also making me nervous once we got way down there. I'm like, are we going to be able to get back? And all the way back, same type engine problem. So when I get back home, I call my dealership and they put it on the computer. It's nothing, no alarm, nothing like that. They called one of their main Suzuki techs in the country. He's in Wisconsin, and he came out, but couldn't find anything wrong, recorded all the diagnostics, sent them to Japan. They couldn't find anything wrong. So then I'm like, I had a family coming up, and I'm like, I need to take the boat fishing. It still worked, and so I took it out and ended up, running it almost out of gas. And I'm like, I gotta go get some gas. Got gas, no problem.
Man, what a roller coaster of emotions, man.
And I got gas everywhere that everybody else got gas there. That's the funny part. I got gas every single place, even on Tour Level Gold. They have me in the background getting gas where John Hoyer is getting gas. You know what I'm saying? So I got gas where everybody else did. So nobody else had any gas issues. So it just kind of makes you wonder, like, and the only place anybody could have really, if somebody did mess with things in my boat, it was at day 2 at the weigh-in in that giant parking lot. But who knows? I don't want to think that, because I really don't want to think that, and trying to wonder like why. But there was a lot of things that went on that day that just seems a little weird,
Man, well, thank goodness nothing prevented you from winning, man. That's awesome. So we'll transition a little bit. For anybody
it's hard
who
to come back
doesn't,
after that.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
well, it's just crazy stuff. But oh well, it didn't work.
Yeah.
You said you were stubborn. There you go.
Yeah.
So Tom, you for anybody who doesn't know about Tom Huynh University, let's talk real quick about that. Just give us a quick little synopsis, what it is, and how it can help people become a better angler.
So it's all, the idea came from a few years of people reaching out saying, Tom, I'll pay $1,000. I'll pay $2,000 just to go on the boat with you for a day to see what you're looking at on the screen. And, that's a lot of money. I was like, really? But I didn't have time. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to take advantage of that, but not even once. And I was able to take, like my brother fishing. My family still live in Arkansas. He'd come up to fish, and he loves fishing, but never with the electronics. So I learned from him and some of my buddies that fish with me, that they could be in the boat with me for a day or a week, and we're catching really good fish, but they would go home to their own setups, same exact setup I have, but they would be calling me all the time. Like, Tom, what were we looking at? What was this? What was that? Just constantly. So there's so many little subtleties, so many little subtle nuances that I do in the boat that I don't even think about anymore, that I was like, well, even if I, charge people this amount of money to come out with me in the day for a day, they're going to catch fish and have a good time that day, but they're going to forget so many things. And then they're going to be calling me all the time, which is fine. But at the same time, that's busy. And so I was like, I met a husband and wife AIM team a few years ago, and she had the idea to, like, maybe because of her line of work and her education before, she's like, maybe we can make a virtual guide boat, and so that's where the idea started. And then so it took me 2 years to gather the content. What it is high definition screen recordings of what I'm actually looking at during pre-fishing situations, tournament situations, or just going out fishing situations, and showing people what fish look like, how to dictate size, how to dictate species, what settings to use, my exact settings, and just simplifying what people are very intimidated to use. And I have 200 or so screen recordings, and all of these high definition screen recordings are, if you watch them on your phone or your computer, it's a full screen live scope screen with me, little inset into it, explaining play by play what you're looking at versus just a dead silent screen that you have to decipher yourself. So it took a lot of time to put it together, but we released it again. Couldn't have been scripted better. We launched a release back in the summer for the end of September. And I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, what if I suck in these tournaments? You know what I'm saying? But then it ended up winning the championship. And 2 weeks later, 10 days later, it was when the release of the university was. But it's crazy. It exceeded our expectations. It, shows everything. Like I don't leave anything out. And it shows just how simple you can keep things and actually be super, super effective. And, we're in over 30 some states now, have enrolled. We're working with some collegiate and high school team across some states as well. I think we're in like over a dozen countries, which is stupid. It's just crazy. And so just to see that people, even in England, out in Europe, are using them for carp, and so it's just nuts to see that it's been something that it's been lacking in the industry. There's nothing like it. Like YouTube can't compare because there's nothing indexed really in YouTube that's structured. And this is the only curriculum-based fishing education out there where it's like built for information retention. So yeah, it's literally everything forward-facing sonar. I'm not sponsored by the university. It's not sponsored by any electronics brand company. And I did that for a reason, so that I'm able to teach just across the board through the university anyway.
That was going to be my next question, because I know, I run Garmin and Lowrance. So that was going to be my next question as well. Do you have anything for me on Active Target on there? Because I'd like to take a peek.
So no. So what I tell people is, though, that all three brands are basically relatively the same technology. It is. The forward-facing sonar technology is the same technology. What differentiates the brands is the processing power behind each system. And as of right now, I've used all three of their latest systems from Humminbird, Lowrance, and Garmin. And Garmin still has the edge out farther away and everything like that. Humminbird made a big advance from Megalife 1 to 2, big time, but they still lack a little bit. Lowrance, what I noticed is the species identification is a tish harder because the Lowrance cone is narrower than Garmin's. So when you're on that target, you can't, if you minutely scan one way or the other, you're either on it or off of it. Since Garmin's is a little wider, when you're on it or off, you're on it, you minutely scan, the edges of that beam is actually hitting the sides of the fish, so you can actually see those little subtleties. So those are the little things like that. When people have asked me, like, Tom, I have Humminbird or I have Lowrance, I don't have Garmin, how's this going to help me? I always tell them, if you can look at these hundreds and hundreds of screen recordings that I'm providing for you, and you can see things on my screen, for example, my 10-pound test braid or 8-pound test line going all the way down in 30-some feet of water, if you can see little things like that you can't see with your systems, that's helping you. Because that's helping you because you know what you need to get, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not sitting there trying to quick brand over brand. I'll be honest, if Humminbird or Lowrance ever comes out with something that I think superior, because I have all three to use, I'll use that to educate, because fishing tournaments is one thing. It's been awesome for me because it's given me a platform. But now my entire goal is education. And so I'm always going to teach with whatever is the best at that time because that's only fair. And so, yeah, I mean, that's how I explain that. And 26% of enrollees right now don't have Garmin's. They have Humminbird or Lowrance forward-facing sonar. 26, that's a big number. And 5% of enrollees have zero forward-facing sonar. Yeah, that's a cool number, actually.
That's crazy.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
And what I thought was really cool too is like a lot of people would be like, well, how much can you really learn if you're not in the boat or if you're not personally looking at it? Well, I shared a boat with you on Sakakawea this year, and I think in that one day, I think I learned more about forward facing just watching your screen than I did in the years prior trying to learn it myself.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. So like with my co-anglers over the past few years too, I've been able to have, them either up front with me or mirrored my screen on my dash where they're watching, but they're learning so much. That's also why I got this idea to do these screen recordings, because it gives people a way to study and just to look, because that's how we learn, is visual. And, I can only explain so much, and now just being able to show it, put it all together so people can see it. And I've been asked a lot by a lot of my big competitors, that, are you afraid that you're giving away too much? Or are you afraid that they're going to catch up with you? And I'm like, I mean, that's always in my mind as far as fishing tournaments. But at the same time, if we don't teach, if we don't educate, this industry is just going to remain stagnant. It's not going to go, just like look at bass. They're so high, they're way up here now because of the education. Their education is having live cameras in their boats because they can't hide anything. So us as walleye anglers, we've been able to hide things for years and kind of bend the truth a little bit on what we're using in arcade, and that's keeping us down. That's keeping sponsorships down. That's making it harder for guys that are co-anglers to step up as pros. It's making it just, that's it. I mean, why not teach? And then it's going to push me to learn more. I'm still, like I said, last year, I've been giving information out now for 2 or 3 years. And in the beginning, nobody believed me because they're like, it can't be that simple. But I've been doing it for 2 or 3 years already, but still, thankfully, was able to go out and win the championship, even though I'm giving away what I'm doing. But it is what it is. And that's what we all need to do. It's just educate. It's not entertaining. Entertainment value in fishing doesn't mean much. It really doesn't. There's no education behind it. But if you can teach, you're affecting way more people.
Yeah, that's actually one of the cornerstones of why we're doing what we're doing with the Walleye Files. We've got fishing reports coming out like every other week. We're working on a series here this summer or the spring into summer on YouTube with definitely the teaching aspect in mind. So
yeah,
we appreciate the crap out of what you're doing, man.
Oh, thank you guys. And what you guys are doing, I watched a few of your past deals, and that's what it is all about, is education. And, you guys are younger than I am, so it's good to see that, we have that coming up. I get grouped in with the kids all the time. That's the other thing. Like the guys who are really competing with forward facing sonar, it's true. They're 20 to 25 years old. I mean, look at the NWT, look at the bass side. And so I get lumped in with that a lot. Like you kids, I'm like, I'm 45 years old. So that's the other thing with the education part. There's so many guys that come to my seminars that are 45 to 80 years old, a ton. So it's cool because I am 45 years old. So I have the trust of them to teach them. And also I have the respect of the young kids that are like, oh, this old guy's beating us. And my plan is to continue to beat you guys for a while. So
I think you're doing a pretty good job at that too.
I'm trying. Like I said, I'm stubborn and I'm going to keep pushing.
So Tom, we'll wrap it up here pretty quick, but
anytime.
Just one last thing here. What is one piece of advice that you could give up and coming anglers to better themselves on the water?
On the water, you have to learn the technology, but don't forget about traditional fishing. Yeah, that's why I teamed up with the guys I did last year. First time I've ever teamed up with anybody was last year. with that in mind. The only reason I had in mind was because these guys are some of the best in the world at reading water, at your traditional methods. And my theory was going into last year, my theory was for the past 2 or 3 years, I said, you combine what I know with electronics with what some of these guys know traditionally, it's going to create a monster. And so for anybody just getting into fishing, you have to, the technology is expensive. Yes. Get a job. I guess that's my first thing. Get a job. Get a job that you love to do. Spend that money. Get your electronics if you're going to want to compete. Learn those fish. Learn their behavior. Learn from, your dad, your uncle, your grandpa, how they used to do things, and then combine them together, and you're going to do well. And then if you're going to want to make fishing a career, the biggest piece of advice I can give you that's going to make you go far is quit lying. Don't just tell people the truth, 100% what you're doing in that boat, and you will be just fine if you do that.
Awesome.
Yeah, we did a tackle talk the other day where I think it's going to come out next week, but I think we gave away a little bit too much information. Right after we hit stop recording, we're like, man, we gave away so much. But then looking at it, it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, if you're helping people catch fish, that's all that really matters,
Especially if you're doing if you're looking for sponsorship, that's what keeps us going is our sponsors, and our sponsors have to be companies that we actually believe in. And if not, it'll never work because we have to lie about what we're using. Again, that education is also good for the sponsors that are supporting us, and for that to be something relatively new to the industry is kind of sad.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to join THU, how do they find it?
Online, fishthu.com. And you go on there, it shows you how to enroll. Depending on holidays, things like that, there's some discount codes, specials I throw out there for everybody who comes to my seminars through the winter times here. They get a little bit of a discount code. So it's $279. That's normal price to buy the course. I say buy because it's not a subscription. Once you buy it, you have it. It's yours forever. When I put new content in it, that's included in it. And yeah, I mean, it's there for you to resort back to on your phone when you're on the water, when you're at home through the winter times. It's a great time because you're keeping your eyes refreshed. In THU, I teach people, I'm redundant with this. I'm like, this is retraining your eyes before you get on the water, because you guys know it. When you're fishing for a week or two straight in the summer, and then you take a week or two off, you get back in your boat and you're looking at the same things, but you're like, okay, is that a walleye, or how big is that fish again? You know what I mean? So this is just keeping your eyes trained. And so we understand too that you're going to use it on your phone, you're going to use it on your computer, you're going to use it on your work computer. So we give people 3 or 4 IP addresses that we allow. And then once it gets to like that 20, 30, you don't want to get crazy where you're sharing your information and your login information. You can't do that. We'll shut you down. But I mean, a lot of time went into this, and, I'm giving away a lot of stuff as far as information is really cutting people's short learning curve. And another number that's fascinating is the confidence level. In the beginning, before the course, we judge people's confidence level. And by the end of the course, it's gone up 63 or 64% just by taking the course alone and not even being on the water yet. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, Tom, we just want to say thank you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate what you're doing for the industry. And, man, we'll see you on the water.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it, guys. We'll see you out there. If you see me out there, holler.
Will do.
Good luck next year, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Good luck. Appreciate you.
Thank you. You guys too.
Bye, guys.
Yep. Later.